I think the thing that I want to kind of cover today is decision making, action points, and trying to limit emotional decisions in drought planning. I think that's the biggest thing I'm seeing through the last year and a half is honestly just kind of some panic. We set records for the worst drought ever in 2017. We broke those last year, and we're working on breaking those again this year. So we're not doing great in the 5-year average, but I'm really trying to focus on things that you can control, and making decisions that will benefit you both this year and next year, I think is something to think through. And I think my last main point for my introduction is there's a phrase that I've been kind of taking to my project planning recently, which is there's never been a situation so bad that you can't do something to make it worse. So trying to remember that anything we do in a drought has consequences and fallout going forward, I think is important to remember instead of just reacting to how bad it is right now.
How important is maintaining that ground cover and litter, and what kind of consideration should we put into that? I can tell you right now, I'm putting less and less consideration into it every day. But you know, do we come off that earlier? Do we come off that ground earlier to leave more litter, or do we just smoke it and hope for the best next year?
I guess I can jump in with one quick thought first. I think that as we see droughts across the West increase in severity and duration and frequency, keeping an eye out for the next drought being right around the corner is really important. And in that way, prioritizing your resilience of your forage resources is really, really important as well. I know that rangelands and ranchers have evolved with drought. It's always been a part of the ranching equation, but yeah, just the way we see these droughts increasing lately, I think that we have to not just think about surviving the current drought, but recovering as quickly as possible so that we're not going in short during the next drought, and making sure that forage and soil resources are prioritized in that way. So I bet Martin has some good thoughts to add to that.
So I'm actually pretty glad I'm in an extension function right now because we actually had a slide on the board about this today. 1 year is really no big deal. 2 years is a little questionable. And by the 3rd year, this was a stubble height study, and even corrected for precipitation on the 3rd year of basically taking too much grass, they're showing a delayed growth curve. So basically it was taking longer to make it to the same amount of growth. It wasn't necessarily starting to grow less, but it was starting to hold it back. So it's kind of like we said throughout and at the beginning, it's maybe not a huge deal this year, but you have to remember next year comes around.
So Martin, I'll get to you in a second, but first I want to address this question from Manitoba. We are proactively planning for the drought and reducing stocking rate. In May, we got 200 to 300% monthly moisture average. Question is the drought over, or did we just have a wet month in a dry cycle? Martin, you want to field that one?
Sure. So Grace will probably touch on some more tools, but an interesting tool that can kind of give you an insight to that. It takes a little bit of feedback time, but the rangeland analysis platform tool is rangelands.app. Has a current growth cycle in it that calculates every 16 days. And if you hold the bar graph on that, it'll show you your percent of average. I was at a ranch just last week where we got a little bit of rain and they were excited. We had some green and drought's over, but we went from a 40% of average year to a 51% of average year in the last 16-day cycle. So still a long ways from on top. But where we're at in the season, Manitoba might be wetter and cooler and grow a little longer, but we're about done for grass. We have stuff that's starting to go to seed that's about over. So at this point, rain keeps it green and keeps the quality up, but I don't think we're gaining any quantity. So I think that's the fear. I know rain is a great thing to get excited about, but it takes a minute and it takes some conditions for it to add more grass.
From Avery in Wyoming, I've noticed blue grama, a warm season grass, go to seed on the short grass prairie over the last couple of weeks. Can signs like this from our forage be indicative of what we might be looking at in terms of drought?
No, I would agree. I think some of my other colleagues on here are probably better equipped to answer that question, but I will say that I've noticed that a lot of people have been using kind of phenology and indicators that are specific to their operation to almost as a trigger for what they're going to plan for in terms of a drought. So I think Avery brings up a really good point in what that trigger could mean for her operation.
I think I'd just add in that usually when a grass goes to seed, that means it's about done. So I think you're on that. Yeah, that's probably an indication of how much it's going to do this year. There's a few species that you get some rain, they go some more, like Western wheatgrass is one, but it's super species dependent. So you'd want to know what your range is dominated by and what chance those have of adding a lot of production with rain.
If you've been in a drought for that long, and you've got a good flush of something, those seeds that come down and land on dirt that's been dry for so long and your soil moisture profile may not be very good. How viable are those seeds? I mean, how in terms of feed production, are we going to see it step up exponentially, or is it going to take a while for conditions to be right to grow that grass again?
Dale, you probably might disagree with me, but I think we're so cool season dominated for a seed to grow. It's not going to do anything real until next year. It's basically going to overwinter before it would ever sprout. So I don't know if seed making it to the ground has a benefit this summer. It's pretty perennial, where the plants that are there this year are the plants this year, but maybe next year it might change.
I guess I think Martin answered that well, that we're basically cool season, depending on what it does from here on out, that we probably aren't going to see a lot more growth or seedling starts in this year.
Do you see an increase in invasive woody type plants, and do you spray or change culture practices to deal with them? That's something I'm seeing. You know, what's out there has definitely changed, and it's episodic. But yeah, how much do you change if it is just episodic? Do you line up the chemicals or change your grazing rotation based on those changes that you see out there in the feed?
So I'd throw a stupid joke out there. A ranch I was at a couple weeks ago, I looked around and I was like, do you usually have this much leafy spurge? Like, we don't have a ton of leafy spurge in the county. This was everywhere. Rancher looked at me, he was like, well, whatever stands up stands out. And it was the tallest thing out there. So it was noticeable. So I know, like, woodies especially can definitely take over whenever they get a chance to. Like where we're at, we have issues with conifers on after years with a lot of fall moisture get started and really take off. So yeah, I'm sure just basically the opening, if grasses aren't taking the space they usually do, is something that contributes to that change.
From Sarah in Oregon, I would be interested in more info on the solar pump. We can draw livestock water from a local river, but access with a conventional pump is difficult. And that I took some notes on that too when you were talking about that, Dale. That's a great idea. That never really occurred to me. You want to stop beating up those sweet spots in the drought, just pump it out to a different location. What's your typical setup like? I know you talked about being very portable. What's a typical setup on your outfit like?
The one we have a 2,500 gallon tank. It's a steel homemade one, and we have our solar panels on top of it. And we haven't tested it for how much lift we have, we get about 10 gallons a minute with a minimal lift. And we've been very pleased with it. There again, we've just been, our reservoirs are very low and boggy. And so we put our pump in, and we haven't been running it that far, probably a couple hundred feet from the reservoir. And we thought we were going to have to fence it. We haven't. So it's worked very well. I guess you'd have to go to the internet. There are several people that are working with solar pumps. One of my neighbors is pumping water with a solar pump from his reservoirs lower in the drainage to tanks up above. And I'd like to see that myself, but they're using it for a distribution tool. And I guess with our solar pump, we actually felt that we could use it as a distribution tool too, because the cattle like the pump water. They'll select for that.
We do a lot of different projects with weird solar things. So we have quite a few projects where we've put like a stagnant solar pump in at a reservoir and then like pumped it to storage to go to other tanks. We have other people that have taken like pickup box trailers and mounted a solar panel in that, and then they can store all the tubing and pumps and cords in that pickup box trailer and tow that around to like reservoirs or creeks to pump into like portable tanks. We're within sight of Canada, so a lot of our stuff comes out of Canada. So like Sundog Solar is a company out of Canada that does a lot of kind of custom setups for that. Ramcat portable tanks they're a canvas quick fold tank that a lot of people have been using that drains fast and can be moved when cows are moved. And we also have a lot of people that kind of what Dale said on quality, even not in the drought, have been using those just for the water quality benefit. So it's definitely an interesting thing to look into that I really like doing as part of projects.
I feel pretty dumb. Obviously making that portable. If you're going to go to all that expense, why not take the extra step and make it portable? These droughts really show the weak spots in a ranch, and I have been running around for the last year and a half, just throwing money at improving our water systems, which is good, but I really should have taken some of that money and invested in some more portable situations. And I'm going to take that with me tomorrow and really think on that.
Yeah.
Obviously nothing's cheap right now. And going solar, what a great time to go solar when we're in the middle of a drought and fuels it. I don't know what it's like everywhere, but we're looking at close to $6 diesel here, and those pumping costs really don't pencil.